It's okay to want to have perfect data that's stored in a customer data platform with an identifier connecting both the anonymized and PII data. And that's a vision to strive for. And you should be doing that. You should be executing small, consistent steps to get you to that perfect end state. But while that's happening, and that process takes not just months, it can take years.
Years.
For you to create that, let's say, customer data platform, which both marketing people and advertising people and data people and the business will benefit from having that, that shouldn't stop you from doing the best you can with the data that's at hand now and actually making decisions. And if that's true, then having those deep relationships, having that empathy, and the
Correct.
business acumen may enable you to actually create or come up with better insights that will drive change and will deliver results, even if the data isn't perfect, because you kind of have the permission to have difficult conversations.
I have worked in many, many different companies. Most of companies' data are siloed, incomplete in different areas, and never truly clean. Right? Do you then stop making decisions because your data is not perfect? No. You continue to make decisions. So one can argue you can tell a story regardless whether your data has high level of quality or is dirty. It's how you tell the story. And why do you think some companies have legacy understanding of what the data is supposed to tell them? And now you need to disrupt that idea. Is because there was that thinking of found the dirty data, right? The data was or incomplete data.
Yeah.
And that's life. Nothing can ever be 100% perfect.
Yeah.
So how do you go about it? And do you just give up and say you don't tell the story because you must have quality of data and all those 3 other things before you action on it? Action is the hardest part. And action is where people are involved. So in order to action, you have to tell good stories. And how do you tell good stories? You work on the things that we talked about: empathy, compassion, power mapping, aligning goals, and have a direction on where you're going and where your stakeholder is going, right? You do all that, and then you tell a story. That's it. If you have very incomplete data, you still tell that story. Because the more story you tell, more actions you create, and more actions will move to better data and then better story.
Peilin Corbanese, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Greg. It's an honor to be here talking to the Delve team and to be on your podcast.
Thank you. Let's start with this tension that I have observed a number of times where I have someone who is a data scientist, maybe they're a data engineer, web analyst, or in a different data role. They work for a brand and they struggle with their relationship with the people running marketing and advertising. And it also happens the other way too. There's a mutual tension. If I'm someone who is a data scientist or in a data role at a brand, and I'm dealing with a marketer, what should I focus on to create business value together with that marketer?
This is one question that can be unpacked into many, many different answers. But I'm going to answer the question this way from a very high level first. The only way you are going to unpack any kind of business value is that you need to form a true connection with the other person. Because we are all very smart, intelligent human beings. We all believe in ourselves. We think we're right. And most of the time we are, especially when you're a data scientist. You're going to see your information right in front of you, and you know what the data is telling you. But the marketers don't always see it the same way. And it's not because they don't understand the data, it's because they come from a different perspective. And it is your job as a data scientist to learn how to tell a story that the marketer can accept. But how do you make other people be open-minded to you, to your ideas, to your numbers? you need to get to know your audience. You need to know them individually and as a collective. And knowing your audience is not just only about the person you're talking to, but it's about knowing the business. The business is also your audience. The brand is your business. The brand is your audience. So understanding your audience, know what drives them, what motivates them, what their fears are, what makes them happy, will allow you to tell a much better story.
How do I actually do that? How do I get to know the motivation, the fears, the challenges that my marketing counterpart is going through?
Ask. Like I met your daughter earlier, and then I asked her, what are you majoring in? She said business analytics. And then she started describing how it's Python, it's Tableau, it's different dashboarding, and it's more analytics and less business. And then I looked at her, and she was looking at me straight in my eyes, and she was smiling at me. And that makes me like her. When somebody likes you, they are more receptive toward what you are saying, even if the data is not what they agree with. So that personal connection and understanding where they're coming from is rather important. And she told me that she wants to be here for this talk because she wants to hear how to make it sing, how to tell a good story. It's not about the data, it's about how you connect with a person and how you approach that person. Reading the person's body language. This beautiful young lady who is sitting here, I bet you're thinking about your job and how to apply, from the podcast to your job, because I can see it. So learning that would help you go very far in terms of how you tell the story, because the story needs to be catered toward your audience.
So the word like can be interpreted in two ways. There's something about I want to be likable, or it can be about acceptance, about deeper understanding. I think it can be misunderstood. What are you hearing?
Whether it's to be understood or to be likable.
To be likable, I think sometimes can be perceived as I need to put on a certain persona that makes me come across as someone who's approachable. I think the word like in the context of asking can also be about like a true understanding of what that person is going through, of putting myself in their shoes. I want to make sure that the team understands the difference between kind of deeper emotional connection and something that maybe is more shallow.
So we all have a mask on when we go to work, right? When you show up in a meeting with your client, but in essence, you have to have a mask on because we're not always 100%. We're not always, we didn't always have 9 hours of sleep the last night. And now you're here. Maybe there's something happening in your family that you're thinking about that. You put on that mask, correct? Right. I hear head nods back there. But that doesn't mean you are not being who you are when you go into that meeting. So that mask is a mask of being a professional. But the intention needs to be there. You need to go in and know that you are striving to be liked and you are striving to understand the other person, truly service them, and want to add value to their day. And you want to send that positive energy over, make them happier, provide that value through your data. And if you do that as a person, and which is my goal for you today, actually, I'm hoping this podcast would give you the energy you need for the afternoon and maybe some valuable tidbits, right? I have my relationship with Delve. There's a history, and that may be interesting to you, but it really doesn't matter. What matters is what are you going to get from this podcast that you can take away and make you become a more successful professional in the future.
I'm a data person, again, data scientist, web analyst, working at a brand. and we're talking about this need to create a deeper emotional connection with the marketer. Is there another way to talk about that emotion? What is, we said it's liked. Is there something even deeper besides like or being understood or asking questions?
I would like to call that empathy and compassion. You want to be empathetic toward the other person and what they're going through, what the company is going through. If the company is lacking in revenue, or maybe they are looking for cost savings, where are you coming from that can be empathetic, that can be compassionate about the people's experience and about the company's experience? So if you approach every conversation with compassion and empathy, it will drive a different outcome, especially with a smile.
So let's say that and whether I am a consultant or I'm inside of the brand, I'm on the data side, and I leaned into creating that relationship. And I now have more empathy. I have two questions. A, what are some practical ways to actually make that happen? How do I actually create more empathy for that marketer or that person in charge of advertising? And number two, when I have empathy and a deeper understanding because I did certain things, what do I get to uncover?
You're talking about journeys, individual journeys now, from my perspective. The journey is, what is your audience journey? Where are they? What are they? What are their fears? What are you trying to get from this? And then also your own journey, who you are going in. So those two things need to match in order to create a nice complement of each other for you to tell the same story using your data, right? Is that where you're going toward?
I was also thinking about some practical ways. So I think that I know that there are things I'm afraid of, right? It's really hard to say during a busy day, let's go for a lunch, because I care to understand what you're thinking. Or if we're having coffee, for me to make it a little more personal and ask someone, how are you doing? What's going on with you? I learned today that someone on this team is going for a honeymoon to Europe on a 12-day cruise next week over coffee. And I could have not asked that person a question about what are you doing this weekend, but I chose to do that and I learned something new. And now the connection is a little stronger between us. I think that people who are, and I consider myself to be a data geek. I love data. I love analyzing it, and I really love finding patterns in it. It's just something that I crave. But to have that mindset and then to actually create empathy with the audience I'm serving, let's say that marketing person, that advertising person, I have to create opportunities for us to connect, for me to extract what's in that person's mind. Is this something you think about? Have you seen this happen in your career?
Absolutely. I'm now a management consultant and I do a lot of business development. So I meet a lot of people on a regular basis. And anytime when I go into my day, when I'm meeting people, I think about the person in my head, usually in the shower in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think about them. I think about the conversations I had with them last. I think about the common points I have with them. And I think about what else I want to bring up in today's conversation. It's not about the data. It's not about what I have discovered. It's not about the transformation I may want to sell them. But it's really about, oh, what is she or he are going through? And is this honeymoon going to bring happiness? Or are they going to learn something from me today? Or should I just listen? One of the most important skills is listening. I'm sure Greg told you this, but you really need to let your client talk as much as possible. Ask probing questions and just let them talk. And if they go in a personal direction, let them talk and be compassionate. Be empathetic about your response and be a human being. put that hat of working for Dell second. Put on the hat of who you are, be authentic to yourself. Yeah, a mask of being a professional, but be who you are. Because if you're not being who you are, not authentic, people can sense that, and that will come across your energy. And when that comes across in your energy, people will less likely trust you in everything you say, including your smiles.
So it's really interesting. I think what we're saying is that in order to create a stronger relationship, in order to create business value, and it doesn't really matter if I'm on the inside of the brand or I'm a consultant, to have empathy, to listen, and to actually understand the pain points, the challenges, the real issues that someone is going through. It has nothing to do with data or the business objectives. It has everything to do with understanding that person first and foremost.
Yeah. So let me tell you a story. Now it's a story time, right?
This is a good time.
Okay. So I have done some transformational work and I led the data science team. So there were a lot of things I would discover. And this is not related to my last employer. This is just in general. So there is this case where through data, I and my team discover something that's controversial. And that's a great thing, to discover something that's controversial, right? As long as you can back it up with data, and the data is clean, is accurate, and you did everything you need to do to make sure it's the best outcome that you can find. And it's telling you something that's controversial to the legacy understanding of the company, of the firm, or of your collaborator or the marketer, right? When you discover that, what do? Do you go very happy? You run into their office and say, hey, maybe chief actuary, maybe CFO, and say, listen, Ed, look at this. This is showing me that we really should be choosing, let's say, credit card as a preferred method versus debit card. Perhaps is that. Should you do that? Or do you want to then go, hey, how do I communicate this? Because this data finding is real. The company will make a lot more money if you pick one option versus the other, but it's against a legacy belief. So how do you figure this out? Then if you're talking to a chief actuary, or if you're talking to a CFO, you need to know, one, how long they have been with the company, what they think the data should tell them. 3, are they open-minded enough to accept the opposite data? 4, if they don't accept the opposite, then how would you go about it? And 5, why would they not be open-minded? Those are the things that you need to think through before you go in and communicate your findings.
So what I'm hearing you say is you almost need to separate the insight, the aha moment, from how do I actually communicate it in a way that this person whose influence I need for it to land. And again, I think it's empathy. It's having empathy for, like you said, duration, what they're going through, where they're at, what they're struggling with. I kind of want to nail that for this point that I'm making to land. And that seems, by the way, terribly complicated. I would just prefer them to give them a deck.
Decks are beautiful, but decks show, not sell.
Decks show, not sell.
Not sell.
Not sell what?
Not sell whatever the idea is or what you were trying to tell them. What sells is people, and people buy from people. So anytime when you talk to someone, you are selling. So you may think that Greg is the only person or Anton is the only person who is in business development. No, they're not. You all are. Every time when you're talking to someone, you're selling. I'm trying to sell my ideas to you right now, right? And I want to sell my ideas to you because I think it can benefit you. It's not because I think I'm right. It's because this is a valid experience. I want to share it with you to see if you resonate with my ideas. So if you go into that meeting knowing the CFO may have been there for 20, 30 years and believes that you shouldn't use credit card because it charges your company a lot of money for transactions, then you need to figure out what data to show him. That would mitigate his concerns. Or maybe he just want to write out his career at current company and retire. And if that's the case, he doesn't want to change anything, then you need to rethink who you want to talk to. Perhaps you want to talk to someone else that you can better influence through this approach, this empathetic approach. And the reason I'm suggesting that is not because it's not worthy for you to try to convince the CFO, is because when you have more allies on your side to tell the same story you are telling, having other people tell your story is where you will get the win.
It always fascinates me how much of this psychological, it's almost like an investigation that you have to go through, like an audit of my audience and where they're at now and what pressure they're under and where they want to go, what their aspirations are, what their fire in the belly is. And I'm using that term to describe what they really care about, where they care to go. It's funny how that clarity is maybe more than 50% of what will define success in my insight to lend. That's something I didn't notice in my 20s. I think I was sensing it in my 30s. I think in my 40s, I truly embraced it. Now, switching gears, there's the emotional side of this. You talked earlier about business acumen. So what I find is that the more that I can read up about the industry of the brand, and it doesn't again matter if I'm a consultant or I can be on the inside, how often does someone work at a travel firm, a insurance company, a non-for-profit, and actually understands the bigger macroeconomic challenges happening within that industry, and then understands how this brand specifically fits in and how this brand that I work for or work with can win. If I was able to tie in deep understanding of the relationships of the people that I rely on to succeed, like what's in their head, and understand the macroeconomic environment within which we all operate. Again, that's even harder to do. I know it's a leading question, but what's been your experience with someone who's in a data role having an understanding of the business, having a business sense? How important is that?
It's extremely important. It's a given. You must know these things. It's a given from the marketer's perspective that you not only know the data, but also understand the context the data is at, the context of where your audience, the business, is undergoing. And the macroeconomics just kind of blends in. It's kind of like a puzzle that you need to do. So you form that outer layer of macroeconomics understanding. Then you know the brand, how the brand fits in. It's a second layer. It's almost like when you were thinking about our atmosphere. And then there's that core of your data and your audience, stakeholders. Now, one thing I did not say a little bit earlier I want to address is not only understanding the persons individually, like what is making you hurt today, what's making you happy today, but you need to do the analysis of a power mapping of your stakeholders, of the people you want to influence. So when you go in, who are the power players, what their pluses, minuses, their pains and pleasures. So you go after because your time is limited, right? I'm sure you work really hard and you still want to enjoy the sunshine outside from time to time. So how do you do that? You need to focus on how you manage your time and go after the most powerful player and influence in the way that you know how. Combine all that together with your understanding of the business acumen, then you would have created yourself a unicorn in you.
Any stories, any examples from your career where you leaned into empathy, you took the time to build a relationship, you then better understood what that marketer, that advertising decision maker is actually struggling with or aspires to, and you combine that with an understanding of the industry and how the brand fits in, And that created some value. Something happened. Something was unlocked. Does anything come to mind?
Yes. The best way is for you to always find a partner in crime. So finding a partner that you can have empathetic bond with and you understand what their struggles are and what they're looking to do and what they care about complement your skill set. And I would say I spent the past 15 years or so learning from different people in my life, either through technology or marketing or advertising. They have a view and I understand their view, and then I pitch mine. And when I pitch mine, I already know what they're saying. So there's a healthy back and forth, pretty similar to what we're doing right now, because there's already a bond. It's meaningful. You understand each other. You want to support each other. So therefore, you're more open-minded to accept the controversial data.
Wrap this up for us. At the end of the day, value has to be generated, and value comes in different flavors. We had breakfast this morning. We spoke afterwards, and we spoke about soft and hard value. That's how you thought about this. I thought about this as intangible and tangible value. How is value created when I have a relationship and I have empathy and I have a business sense? What emerges when those two things are combined? And I'm a data person, for a data person specifically.
I'm going to give you a different answer than I gave you earlier.
Good.
Okay. So you need to know what your mission is in life, your individual mission, and you need to know your stakeholders' mission is. And that includes the business mission. True mission, not the fake ones that they put on paper. Okay, the true mission of how the company actually functions. And let's be very honest, very often the mission could be helping people, protecting financial future, but the true mission is to make money. And that's okay. I'm not judging. We need all these things for the world to go around. And you need to know what your mission is. Once you know what your mission is, you can come from a very empathetic perspective because you know what you want. You know what you want, you know what you want to get out of it. And you know what they want, you know what they want to get out of it. So put that together, contribute to the other person's mission, contribute to the company's mission. If the company is about generating more revenue, show them how. Then you will always win.
So at Delve, we talk about a goal match. We did not rehearse this, by the way. It will seem like we have. So we talk a lot about goal match between where I'm going in my life, like what do I want, what do I need, what I care about. I'm the only person who cares about it. Nobody else will care about what I want, and I will. And then it's about how is this environment, whether it's Delve or a brand I work with or the consulting firm, helping me get to my goals. And I think sometimes we are in places, maybe we're in transition, and we don't actually know where we're going. Something changed. And I think it's okay. At other times, I think it's really important that we're clear about here's where I'm going, and this relationship, this company that I'm in right now is or is not helping me get to those goals. So if that, all of that is true, and I think it's true, by the way, I think that goal match is absolutely a key to unlocking my potential and creating value for the people around me. What you're saying is that's the biggest value creation moment from both having that relationship and a degree of empathy and understanding, having some business acumen. It's not about money. It's not about saving money, making money, having more clarity, clear insight. It's actually about a human-to-human connection where I'm enabling you to get to your goals faster and you're doing the same to me.
Precisely. It's about goal matching. It's about vision matching, right? You need to have a vision. And if you don't have one, it's okay. You can create one this afternoon. So create your vision to who you want to be. And the way I look at it, the way I preach or pitch is that think about what you want to do with your one and wild, precious life. So if you can answer that question for yourself, then you know what you want from every interaction you have with your daily job, with your client, with yourself. Then it's much easier to match up with your stakeholder and your company's goals.
Well, look, this could be a separate podcast, but let's go there for a second because I care about this deeply. In a way, caring about whether it's myself or my family or this team, you guys or clients. And again, this is the same thing as for me being inside of a brand. Nothing is more powerful. And it's so almost like woo-woo and spiritual, but we are spiritual, right? We are emotional very much. It's all about emotion, really, in life. That's what ties us together. It's the invisible thread between all of us. But if I can have clarity about my own journey and where I am on it and where it's leading me towards. And by the way, it changes with time. But I know where I am now and where I'm going in the next 6-12 months. And if what I want to do, let's say I'm a data scientist working with a client or inside of a brand with an internal customer, and my love for data science maps with their need for data science to provide them with answers, I think something magical is going to happen. There will be absolutely emergent value. But if I am disconnected, I'm not in the right place, I'm disengaged, and I don't really like Python anymore, using this example, and the person I'm working with doesn't really want where they are either. We both have these masks, you used it earlier. I really don't know what we can truly do together.
So when that's the case, you need to be vulnerable and take off your mask and actually probe and ask that question.
That's hard. That's super hard.
It can come. It will come with practice. And I'm saying this is because I've done enough decks where I show so many dollar sign, like dollar with many, many digits to say, if you do this, you will get this, which I know because it's real data. It's from historical data. So if you just make that change, it will happen this way, with very minor variations. I know these answers, but that doesn't work. It doesn't matter how big that number is. It just doesn't work. It's all about people. Transformation, which is where we're at right now because of the generative AI, the AI technology. Every industry will be disrupted. Every company will be disrupted. Each individual will be disrupted. It's how you show up and how you learn from these experiences to make it meaningful and transformational for you.
I want to be contrarian for a moment. I still think that I can be transactional. I don't need to lean into relationships too much. And maybe my business knowledge is limited. And again, we're talking about the perspective of someone who's in data. And I can still deliver a good story. But I think that the impact of that story will be much bigger if there is a relationship and if I get the business enough to ask good questions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think?
I agree. You can be somewhat transactional as you'll get enough of impact because the data speaks for itself. And if you have a stakeholder that's open-minded and that look at data and go, oh, shoot, yes, we should do that. That would be an easy job to do, right? You can be that way, but do you drive value from that? Do you drive pleasure from that? That's a question to ask yourself.
Well, it's hard to create something impactful, whether that's a deck or analysis, if I'm actually not having fun doing it. And you said something earlier about showering, right? Taking a shower. And, obviously a very personal moment that we all have most mornings. Now, I remember being at Digitas, maybe early 2000s, so probably about 20 years ago. And I had this manager who I'm still in touch with. We still email, we still see each other like once a year in New York. And he told me a couple of times that, and I quote, he would say, I was in the shower or I was shaving and I had this idea. Let's talk about it. And I remember distinctly not having those moments. I was surprised that he thought about work when he was showering or shaving. And that never happened to me. And guess what happened? I left Digitas. There were many reasons why I did that. But one reason was that at that point in my life, I was in my mid-late 20s, what I was doing was no longer fun to me. It was no longer exciting to me. And I thought about that comment many times, that like since then, if I think about work outside of work, and I'm not saying to be a workaholic, I'm not saying it's always on, but if I don't think about the things I'm doing 40 hours a week, sometimes that tells me that maybe I need to make a change. Have you had any experiences like this?
All the time. And I work very hard to want to think about work and want to think about work with pleasure. In fact, like there is a branch of people who believe that personal and business should never mix, right? So you keep your personal friends and you keep your business friends. You don't cross lines. I am the opposite of that. I cross lines all the time. I think about business all the time. I think about people in business all the time. I thought about Alexandra this morning when I was in my Uber coming, because I remember our conversation before. And that's in preparation to meeting with your father, because I want to bring my whole self to the meeting here today with you and with you. Even though I'm just getting to know you today, I want us to have at this level, some level of meaningful connection, because I want to send out that positive intention, that energy. Whether you receive it the same as my intention or not, it doesn't matter, but I want to send it out there because that's my contribution to the world today. So I think about work, I think about people, and I do it intentionally. And I mix them together. And if I'm not happy, I don't want to think about them because it's all about resentment, anger, and frustrations. And my gut is telling me that, then it's time to move on. You need to have mapping, you need to map your goals. The goals need to match.
I think my experience is that what was really amazing about COVID is that it gave us the permission to think about what I want, where am I going, what's most important to me. I see in business, by the way, and with just friends, I see this increased need to have these meaningful connections. And I like how you said that, like when people say it's just business, I think it's terribly stupid and short-sighted. How is it just business if I'm here 40 hours a week with these people, working on clients, solving interesting problems, right? Dealing with, sometimes we have loss in our life. Sometimes something really good happens. How is it supposed to be just business when I'm here 40 hours a week? And in my case, it's probably 60 hours a week. How is the emotion supposed to be absent from that process?
Can't. It can be absent. You have to bring your whole self to work. And again, I am the opposite of some people that believe that you need to show part of yourself, your role, ROLE, self to work. That's your role, that role you play in. I actually believe you bring your whole self to work, be who you are, communicate that, and be sincere about it. And if it's not the right fit, you need to move on because life is short. You don't want to waste time in a job that does not make you happy, that you don't think about often.
Shifting gears. Let's say that I am now in a media department, in a marketing department, in an advertising department. Again, this could be on a consulting side, this can be on a brand side. And I'm dealing with those data people. And they're coming to me with spreadsheets and reports. Is it just me, or is there tension also from the side of a marketer or someone who's managing paid search, who wants data and insight, and yet something is broken, something is dysfunctional with the people who are supposed to create those insights for me so I can do my job better?
It's the same. just the perspective is reversed. Marketers would have the same challenge as data people do, because marketers also want the best outcome and are ingrained in their beliefs. So the way to be open-minded is to find that partner and to find that common ground and then work toward listening to each other and share perspectives. Marketers can give you the business acumen that you may be looking for, or that macroeconomics perspective. You can have that chat and you can add in your data and have that discussion. And that usually, I'm a little bit of a data geek too. That will make me very happy. Talk about data, talk about macroeconomics and how to improve things, just drives me.
So are you saying that if I'm in a media or otherwise marketing role, it is on me to not just expect someone who's in a data role to come to me with insights, but I need to guide them. I need to pay it forward in some way. I need to invest in creating a broader understanding of business challenges and what are some of the opportunities that we can get to.
Creating meaningful relationships with the data people to help data people understand where they're coming from and teach that listening skills. Because sometimes data people need multiple times for you to really clearly point out, no, I just want money, right? I need to make more money this quarter. So what kind of campaign can you run for me to get to more revenue this year? Like this quarter, above expectation, above budget. What can you do? What are you finding? And that needs to be clearly communicated. And once you hear that, then you can go help solve the problem.
Any recent examples from your experience where you've seen a marketer or someone who's in charge of media do this well or badly?
It's usually somewhere in the middle. If you have a good partnership, when you have a good partnership with the marketing folks, they will listen to you and they will question you. And most likely the resistance you're going to see would be they were slow to make decisions, slow to react. And I can think about an example of implementing, let's say, media mix modeling, right? Where you drive the media spend, but then that's a data person telling the marketers how to spend their money. And that's pretty scary. So you really have to make a lot of friends in order for the marketing folks to truly trust you and want to experiment and trust your model to implement it. So from that perspective, you need to do the hard work to explaining why this should work or what are the guardrail you will put in so that more money will be made or that it wouldn't fail miserably. Sometimes it's not positive outcomes. Sometimes it's just minimize failures. So you need to choose. You need to choose how you're going to go about it.
So Del, we talk about being a performance media agency, but we're very clear that that's a shortcut for what's under the surface, and that's the integration between technology, data, and media. I really believe that's where magic happens and that's where the future is, and I feel good about being future ready. I think we're future proof. But the thing that we continue to struggle with as an agency, and I see this all the time on the client side too, is that integration. Any words of advice on how to increase integration, collaboration between all these different teams?
That's a very tough question. I don't think there's a right answer for that question, other than you have to keep on trying to experiment, because the way you can truly integrate people, technology, is by changing people's mind to create that strong bond of retention, collaboration, and willingness to experiment. So you can use any technology that you want, including generative AI, but if you're not talking to your partner and you're not thinking about how you are mapping your goals, none of the technology is going to give you what you need.
So let's talk about Jen and I for a second, right? You do lots of public speaking, you are on stages, educating. the industry about the role of AI in creating value. What is your point of view on AI? And by the way, it just feels like it's a topic that we all talk about, and yet we struggle really understanding, like, what does it actually mean? So what does it actually mean to you to use AI and tell better stories and create business value? There's a lot in what I just shared, but what stands out for you?
I think Gen AI makes me a better person.
In what way?
It makes me a better person. So, for example, I recently signed up with Firefly's note taker. So, my AI's name is Fred. He goes to meetings for me, and then he gives me a summary of what's the percentage of time I spend in listening versus talking, and what is my sentiment, how much is positive, and how much is negative, and how much is neutral. So I am on a journey to become a very positive person and to contribute that energy to the world. So when I start seeing my positivity goes down in percentage in my conversations, and I go, I need to do better. I want to do better. So how do I bring more positivity into the conversation? So that will be my to-do for the next day. So from that perspective, Gen AI makes me a better person. Now, secondly, Gen AI, again, only about Fred, kind of helps me a lot in terms of my productivity because I'm often double booked. So when I double book, I can only go to one. So I send Fred to the other meeting. And Fred will record the entire thing, gives me a summary, and tells me a story of the meeting. And that story is very easy to read. So if I want to dig in, I can just listen to the actual meeting or the transcription, read the transcription. And now very often with my speech, with my session descriptions, I write prompts with AI, and it will spit back a whole list of descriptions of what my session description should look like. And I can go in and decide whether I like certain things or not. So I use AI to create content. And very often I would even add that I need to have a mic drop moment to ask for advice. It's a shortcut.
Can AI help to create that moment of the mic dropping when it comes to these data people and these media people working together?
I don't think AI can do it. Only humans can. AI cannot read intentions as well as we can still. And if you learn, you will be able to have that mic drop moment.
How about a very transactional moment of telling a better story? So if I want to be told a better story as a marketer, or I want to tell a better story as a data person, can I use AI to assist me with telling a story, maybe with getting outside of my zone of understanding, right? Crossover, push out the boundaries of my consciousness when it comes to these business problems that we're facing?
Try it. Yes, for sure. Put in your content into AI and different ones, and to see which one you like more.
What I find is that if I am stuck with having a different point of view on how to explain something, if I just go to Gemini or I go to ChatGPT and I enter a prompt, sometimes it's irrelevant. I don't really appreciate anything I've read, and sometimes I'm surprised by the new ideas that I'm given. And then I think that helps me deliver a better message.
I believe AI is more well-rounded than we can because it just gets all the data and kind of split it back out to you. But at the same time, that's somewhat generic. So you could understand it. It makes you better because then you can use your personal spin on it and to kind of edit it, fix it, and put new ideas in.
So bring it home for us. So we spoke, if I take a step back, I think we're talking about this inherent tension between people who are in data roles and in advertising or marketing roles. There is absolutely a tension. Again, we're experiencing This here delve in the context of breaking silos between departments, people understanding each other. This happens also on the client side, where technology, data, and media teams don't communicate. And there is a reason why they don't work well together. There is lots of opportunity for them to work well together. There's something about the need for deeper relationships that we spoke about, deeper business acumen, and all of it is done to create bigger business value. If someone came to you and said, just restate for me what I need to do to create more value through more collaboration or better integration so that we can work together as a more cohesive team, regardless of whether I'm on the data side or media team, what would you tell this person? What would you tell them to remember from this conversation?
To know who you are, have clear vision of what you want to achieve in life, and understand your opponent or your collaborators' vision in life or in business, and try to see if you can connect it together. I think that's the most important part. Once you can connect that, then the rest is being a human being, being yourself, be compassionate, be empathetic, and know the data. Knowing the data is the last point that I want to make.
Well, and that takes us in a different direction, right? I mean, we spoke about this, but my deep belief is that there are 4 steps to data, which is you collect it and you trust it, you report on it, you create insight, and then you actually take action. And to link it back to AI, it's funny how it is about relationships, it is about emotion, it is about empathy, it is about getting to our goals. And I know you and I disagreed on this, because I made a point that, but isn't it all about clean data at the end of the day? And you said that you felt that I actually can have dirty data and I can still tell a good story. Just can you unpack this for a second?
I have worked in many, many different companies. Most of companies' data are siloed, incomplete in different areas, and never truly clean, right? Do you then stop making decisions because your data is not perfect? No, you continue to make decisions. So one can argue you can tell a story regardless whether your data has high level of quality or is dirty. It's how you tell the story. And why do you think some companies have legacy understanding of what the data is supposed to tell them? And now you need to disrupt that idea. Is because there was that thinking of found the dirty data, right? The data was or incomplete data.
Yeah.
And that's life. Nothing can ever be 100% perfect.
Yeah.
So how do you go about it? And do you just give up and say you don't tell the story because you must have quality of data and all those 3 other things before you action on it? Action is the hardest part. And action is where people are involved. So in order to action, you have to tell good stories. And how do you tell good stories? You work on the things that we talked about: empathy, compassion, power mapping, aligning goals, and have a direction on where you're going and where your stakeholder is going, right? You do all that, and then you tell a story. That's it. If you have very incomplete data, you still tell that story. Because the more story you tell, more actions you create, and more actions will move to better data and then better story.
I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's okay to want to have perfect data that's stored in a customer data platform with an identifier connecting both the anonymized and PII data. And that's a vision to strive for. And you should be doing that. You should be executing small, consistent steps to get you to that perfect end state. But while that's happening, and that process takes not just months, it can take years.
Years.
For you to create that, let's say, customer data platform, which both marketing people and advertising people and data people and the business will benefit from having that, that shouldn't stop you from doing the best you can with the data that's at hand now and actually making decisions. And if that's true, then having those deep relationships, having that empathy, And the
Correct.
business acumen may enable you to actually create or come up with better insights that will drive change and will deliver results, even if the data isn't perfect, because you kind of have the permission to have difficult conversations.
That's a very well summarized statement. I hope this was valuable to everybody. It's really simple. Be a human being, know where you're going, contribute to the world, and then know your data and have some business acumen.
Peilin Corbanese, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you here. I'm really glad that our schedules aligned, and I'm really looking forward to going on a hike with you tomorrow.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you to the Delve team for having me here today.
Thank you.